Today on Censorship, I sit down with Charlotte Otter. Charlotte has spent her life shaping stories, first as a journalist, then as a corporate communications leader, and now as an author and advisor, helping others own their voice. In this episode, we talk about what it truly means to build a reputation rooted in authenticity rather than performance. Charlotte shares her journey from corporate leadership to entrepreneurship and how redefining success begins with self-awareness. This is a conversation about trust, courage, and the power of showing up as your true self. Hello, Charlotte. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be in the studio.
Would you get us started by introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Charlotte Otter. I'm an author. I'm a communications advisor. I'm also a podcaster, and I spent most of my career in corporate communications.
And how would you thread all these different roles together?
The common thread across everything I've done in my career has always been writing. So I was a child obsessed with books, obsessed with writing, and when I went to university, I tried to think about a job that I could do that would involve writing. So I started out as a journalist, and it was quite a quick hop from journalism to PR. It often is, and then PR led me into the corporate communications world.
And you went quite high in the corporate communications world.
Yeah. My last gig was as head of executive communications and employee communications globally at a big tech company. And I enjoyed that very much. I very much enjoyed that leadership role. And, a lot of the work I now do is based on some of that experience of working with executives, but also to talk about leadership.
And many would call that maybe the peak of success, to be in such a big role, and yet you left it behind. What was happening internally for you to make that step?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think that a lot of people were changed by COVID. You sit at home and you think, is this really what I want from my life? I also had a great example at home of my husband leaving corporate and setting up his own business, and he's since been through a couple of iterations. So I've had a really great example of how creative and fun it can be to run your own thing. So with his support and with the confidence of watching it happen at home, it wasn't the hardest of steps for me to make that next step.
That participated in reassuring you, maybe to give you the courage, because it is a risk.
It is a risk and it is scary. It definitely helped with courage. He was also incredibly supportive. So what I did when I left was I started my own corporate communications advisory, which still exists today. But at the same time, I also went back to university. So I had a 30-year gap from my last degree to the one that I recently finished. And going on a course that lasted 18 months really helped me, because we had a fantastic cohort from all around the world. And there was that sense of, oh, this is where I belong. So, I no longer had a team, but I did have this group, and we kind of walked through our MSc together, and that was really helpful.
So that was the transition period.
Yeah, it was a transition, and it was actually a change leadership course run jointly by HEC Paris and Oxford Saïd Business School. So I was going through change and learning about change with a group of people who were all also experts in change. So it felt very appropriate in the moment.
And I imagine must have helped to integrate what was happening and all of the different stages of change as you were going through them.
Yeah, it really did. And we looked, we in the course you study change from a global point of view, from a national, continental point of view, in corporates, in teams, and change self as a change agent. So all those different aspects were helpful, but I've particularly found the self as change agent module really useful.
I'm sure. You wrote your thesis on reputation and change. You wrote a book on reputation management. I have a question on the word, because reputation carries a lot. How do you define reputation, and how does it differentiate from identity?
Yeah, so identity, I guess I'll start there, is kind of classed as who you are, where you come from. So my identities could be South African, German, female, mother, communicator, author, journalist. But your reputation it's the sum total. It's quite a complex reputation. It's the sum total of the expectations people have of you based on how you behaved in the past, what they think of you now based on what they know of you, and how they predict you will behave based on what they know of you. And it's very, very closely tied to trust.
Trust, yes.
So it's kind of known as trust's closest sibling is reputation. And so I wanted to look in my thesis on how the CEO and the head of comms build trust to manage and mitigate reputational risk. So I interviewed several CEO and heads of comms pairs. I asked them the same set of questions, but I interviewed them separately. And that was a really interesting exercise to see how they answered the different questions. And then from there, the book was born. So once the thesis was finished, I said to my professors, I want to carry on. What shall I do? And the one said, do a PhD, and the other said, write a business book. And I thought, well, the business book will probably be quicker. So that's what I did.
Very nice. I have a question coming to my mind. As a woman, I feel I was taught to protect my reputation more than to own the narrative. Do you feel that's something recurrent, or how do women in leadership differ in how they manage their reputation?
Well, on one level, they shouldn't. But I do think there's potentially a shyness with some female leaders around not owning their reputation quite as much as their male peers might, because they have the sense that, we're told that it's self-promotion. We're told, don't be loud. We might be socially conditioned to be a bit more modest or be more in the background. And this is something I'm working on with my clients now. So I say, it's not enough to do a great job at work. That is only 50% of the job. The other 50% is to be seen to be doing a great job, because being seen is what gets you to the next stage. Being seen will get you the next board gig or the next CEO role or the next opportunity. And if you're not building that reputation and not being seen, how do people know that you're a great candidate? And I think that women are sometimes a little bit too modest.
Too much humility coming in modesty, I think, is a better word, actually. You're right. We're taught to keep to ourselves more.
Yes, and what I'm seeing as I interview more and more people around this topic is that by building your reputation out loud as any leader from a diverse background, diverse identity, or underrepresented minority, by telling the story of your leadership journey, not all perfect, not all the great things you've done, but also the mistakes, also the errors along the way, also the detours that you took by mistake. By doing it out loud and telling those stories, it's so much more than self-promotion, because what you're doing is more than representing for the next generation. By showing the steps you took, you build a bridge for the next generation to follow you. So what I say to people who come to me and go, oh, but I don't want to, it's self-promotion, it's so uncomfortable. I say, hang on, it's altruistic. If you show how you did it, the next little girl who wants to be a CEO, you've demonstrated what the steps are. It's selfish to not tell your story.
I love that perspective. Your book is called We Need New Leaders. What do you mean by that? I understand it to be a take at diversity in leadership. Is that right? And what else is there?
Yes, so the book sits at the intersection of leadership, reputation, and diversity. The diversity angle was not part of my thesis, but I thought to myself as I made that transition from thesis to business book, if I want this to be a passion project and something I spend 2, 3, or 4 years writing and then talking about, it has to come from the heart for me. And from the heart for me is, how do we get more diverse leaders from diverse backgrounds and underrepresented minorities into leadership in our businesses? And so I set out with the question, when I set out to write the book, the question I had in my mind was, what can leaders from diverse backgrounds, diverse identities, underrepresented minorities learn from the tools of reputation management, so my skill set, to land, keep, or create their dream leadership roles. And I interviewed 40 established and emerging leaders about their reputation, about how they saw diversity, about their identity, and about their leadership journey. And then from those interviews, I then distilled it into some learnings.
How has your vision of leadership and success evolved as you went through corporate, left corporate, run your own business now? How has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting journey for everyone who has a leadership role, because I think that you arrive in leadership with a very specific image of what leadership is, often defined by those around you. And, you know, I didn't grow up in my family or in the culture around, society around me, with any examples of female leaders in corporate. So my mother and the mothers of my best girlfriends all worked. They were secretaries, they were nurses, they were teachers, they were hardworking mothers, but none of them were corporate leaders. So when I became a leader in corporate, I imprinted on the men around me, which was fine because some of them were really good leaders, but it always felt slightly uncomfortable for me. So my journey within leadership was, I have to learn to accept that what I am is enough. I don't have to be anything. I don't have to assume anything. Leadership is not an artifact that gets given to me. Oh, now you're a leader, here's leadership. You evolve it yourself. It's organic. You own it and you evolve it yourself. So I learned that leadership is much more organic than I thought it was. And that was really highlighted by my 40 interviews in the book. You know, I spoke to folks who are leading businesses in their 20s. I spoke to people who are leading in their 60s. So that array of generations. And the thing that came up the most for me in my interviews was the incredible self-awareness that people have. This awareness of who they are and how they show up. And in turn, how that affects their leadership. So they're incredibly intentional about language, incredibly intentional about how they show up, intentional about how they lead, and intentional about how they make other people feel. And it gave me confidence that there are a lot of great leaders out there.
So authenticity is a key factor in managing your reputation and impacting people around you as a leader. It's in your own terms. I like that. I like that a lot. As you transitioned out of corporate into running your own business, was there any moment where you felt maybe a loss of identity because you did have such a big job, and changing the label can be difficult? It comes with fears. We talked about that. But did it come with some sort of loss of identity, and how did you navigate this reinvention?
I'm not a person who regrets. I'm always looking to the next thing that's coming, and I'm always engaging creatively with possibility and opportunity in the future. So I wouldn't say that I spent a lot of time looking to the past and feeling regret. I think it took me a while to acknowledge that my job had actually been quite big. You know, I think I underestimated myself. I kind of thought, oh well, if I do it, it can't be. It's not that impactful a job. And so, one of the things that leaving has taught me to do is look back and go, it actually was quite a big job. It was a senior role. It was a global role. It was a big team. And so I'm actually almost retrospectively leaning on that leadership experience and taking lessons out of it almost more now. So it's almost as if the distance and the time has given me the opportunity to really reflect on my time as a leader. And it helps me as I navigate both working with leaders and also speaking about leadership.
Do you think it's the phenomenon that sometimes when you're faced with fears or new challenges and you doubt yourself, or maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome, one cure I keep hearing is look at what you've already accomplished and know that you can accomplish what's next. Is that what you're describing here? That you rely on your past experience and on the satisfaction of that accomplishment to reassure yourself when there is doubt coming forward?
No, I think I'm mining it much more now as an experience that puts me on eye level with the folks who I work with. So I think I actually underestimated my role while I was in it. And it was impostery, because if it's been given to me, it can't be that important. And it was only on leaving when I started talking to people, this is what I used to do. And people would say to me, oh my God, that's quite a big gig. And I'd be like, well, okay.
I did it. Can't be that hard.
And so and it's not about big or small, but it's about, I had a fantastic experience, one that was surprising in many ways. And I'm now able to mine it in an interesting way that helps me understand the people who I work with and the topics that I speak about.
Right. So it puts you on the same level. It brings it forward your credibility.
Yes, I think so. And I think when you work in a hierarchy, I was always looking to the next gig. I was always thinking, well, why am I not SVP? Why am I not there? Instead of enjoying the feeling of where I was. And so now I look back and I think, well, actually it was quite a big gig, and I was incredibly lucky and privileged to have that experience.
You're a writer and you specialize in reputation management. Do you think we can rewrite our professional stories the way we rewrite a book? We edit, we spin the narrative. Can that work?
Look, I think we're all human, so we do. I mean, I've just done that. I've just rewritten. I think it's natural. I think that humans do. But I mean, we all have richness of experience. We all have experiences to draw on. We all have stories to tell. We've all made mistakes. We've all done good things. And that's what reputationally makes us interesting. So it's less about rewriting the stories than attaching to them and sharing them in a way so that it's helpful to others.
Beyond your interviews and your podcast, you also advise, you do client work. What patterns do you see in the way leaders talk about themselves?
Yeah, so the clients who come to me are self-selecting. So if someone comes to me to do the program, to go through the program that I offer, something's not working. And the pattern is often, I know what my business messages are, but I want to show up as authentically me. How do we find the bridge from who I am to the messages of my business so that I can tell that story in a way that's authentic and comfortable to me, so that my voice is natural, that people trust it, and so the stories bubble up out of me in a natural way. Based on my experience in corporate, what I really want to help leaders get away from is that obsession with the briefing book and learning the messages. You know, those messages should be so ingrained and so natural and automatic to a leader, they should just bubble up out of them. And I mean, I tell the story, and it's to my own shame. For a large corporate event, I once produced a briefing book for an executive that was over 100 pages long. Now that spoke to her fear, her team's fear, and my lack of confidence at the time as an executive communicator. I should have said, you don't need it. You're in a very, very senior role. Own your story and go forth and do it. So it was a learning for me to not, I never want any of my clients to need even a one-page briefing book. The story should come from within.
They should know it. They should be it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. What is something that is commonly misunderstood about reputation?
I think it goes to this idea of self-promotion. You know, when I talk about reputation, people go, oh, but I don't want to work on my personal brand. And it's often cultural. So executives who have come from an American background, very comfortable with the idea of personal branding, speaking, self-promotion. It's natural. It's part of their culture. Scandinavian executives don't even want to be seen, completely shy. So I think it's why I talk about reputation, because rather than personal brand, because personal brand is tied up with this idea of self-promotion, whereas reputation for me is very serious, because if you lose it, it's expensive. If you lose your CEO role because of some bad behavior you did, for example, the astronomer CEO on the Coldplay Kiss Cam, that was expensive. Within 2 days he had no job. So your reputation is it's very expensive to lose, and it's very, very serious. And so by talking about reputation rather than personal brand and self-promotion, I'm hoping to help executive realize that it's something worth investing in.
How do you repair when you lose or damage your reputation?
So there are a couple of sides to this. First of all, if you make a mistake, it's best to apologize as fast as possible and acknowledge the hurt.
Own it.
Own it. People who fail to do that, it takes much longer for their reputation to come back. But one of the CEOs in my thesis research said to me, he looks at his reputation as the idea of aspirin versus vitamins. So he works proactively on his reputation. He says he spends up to 5 or 6 hours a week on social media, and he's now in his second CEO gig. So he spends even more time in his second CEO role than he did in his first CEO role. He sees it as value not only for himself, but also for the business. And he said by proactively working on his reputation, it's vitamins. So he's building a strong immune system of trust, so that if and when that crisis hits, and it usually does hit, his audiences, his stakeholders, the media, the analysts, the employees, the customers, the potential customers, know who he is and trust him. So when he says, look, folks, this thing went wrong, it's really terrible, we're sorry, we're going to fix it, people believe that he will. And he said, not working proactively on your reputation, it's like taking an aspirin. Then when crisis hits, you go, oh, sorry, we shouldn't have done that. Nobody knows who you are. People don't trust you. And you're taking an aspirin to try and fix your headache.
And the first time they hear about you is when there is the mistake that's been
which
made.
Is disastrous. Mm-hmm. So out of all the CEOs I interviewed, 90% work proactively on reputation management. They see it as a critical part of not only their own reputation and getting to whatever the next gig is, but part of that it's intrinsically linked to building the reputation of their own business as well.
You've worked across journalism, high tech, academia. What's next for you?
Well, I'm probably going to carry on doing what I'm doing. I mean, I have a sense that there's another book coming. I'm starting to sort of explore what that topic might be. I'm going to carry on podcasting. I am going to carry on with my client work, which I enjoy very much. I get an enormous sense of satisfaction out of working one-to-one with a leader. And I think it's probably more of the same.
What is, when you take on a client as an advisor, what does success look like? When do you feel that it's satisfactory and successful?
So I have a very specific program that I walk them through. But for me, success is if they are empowered enough to go out into the world and own their story, and they don't need a one-page briefing book, and they don't need a communicator to write their LinkedIn posts for them. So the goal for me is to empower a leader to be the owner of their own reputation. Because, having ghostwritten for years for executives, that to me never felt really genuine, both for me or for them. And the people with the best reputations are people who have deep self-awareness, who know who they are, who act according to their values, and trust that the stories that they tell are representative of who they are as a person and of the business that they're serving.
What advice would you give someone who wants to reinvent themselves, regardless of where they want to go, what helped you take the jump?
Yeah, so I worked with a coach when I left SAP, and for me, with her, it started with my values. And we did quite an intense values exercise to get it down to 3. And if you know what your values are, it's much easier to attach to a purpose. And it's much easier to know what work I'm going to say yes to and what work I'm going to say no to. So I think that self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-understanding work, if folks don't do that, it's much harder to reinvent because there's a disjunct. You're not attached to your values and a sense of purpose.
So alignment is key.
Yeah,
fundamental.
Very much so.
If you could talk to Charlotte when she started off in journalism, what would you say?
Oh, I'd say be a lot more confident. Yeah, don't be so mousy.
How did you go about gaining that confidence?
It's come over time, moving to a country where I couldn't speak a single word of the language and settling and living there for 30 years and raising 3 bilingual children, moving, so that's the journey from South Africa to Germany. I think life has given me confidence. But, somebody asked me the same question at one of the book launches, and I just said, I wish I'd known that you are enough. You don't have to mask. You don't have to pretend. Who you are right now in this moment is enough. And I wish that was something someone had said to me earlier on.
It's a good lesson. Is there a question that you wish people would ask you more often, whether it's about what you do or their own reputation, something that's not asked enough in your opinion?
I love questions. Questions are very powerful. But nothing really springs to mind. I mean, as I said, my clients are self-selecting. So I think my wish is I wish more executives and senior leaders would want to find that genuine, authentic, internally values-driven foundation of stories that they tell, because you're much more likely to gain followers if you come from an authentic place. I think that leaders are scared of vulnerability. They're scared of admitting mistakes. People are so much more likely to follow you and be interested in you and ask you questions and ask you for advice if you show little cracks in the perfect front that often executives feel they have to have.
Let them shine, really. Yeah.
Yes, shine, but be authentically so, and don't be perfect. I think perfection is so boring.
It is.
It's so dull. Just be a little bit messy. Swear if you need to swear. Own who you are and show up as yourself. It's much more interesting.
Where do you find your inspiration? Are there books you would recommend? Podcasts? Where do you find your own inspiration when you need to recharge and find your creative juices?
Yeah, my recharging place is in the forest. So I live in Heidelberg, and 5 minutes from my front door, I'm in the forest. Also 5 minutes from my front door, I can get really good coffee, and both things are very important to me. But walking nature daily. So during COVID, my husband and I replaced our commute down the motorway to work with what we call the commute in the forest. And I think that's been life-changing for me. But I do listen to podcasts. I'm also a very intensive reader. I'm quite hungry for books. I'm forever collecting and reading more books. But it's more for me about internal wisdom. And I find that when I'm out in nature walking.
So look within. And there's a meditative quality to the walk in the forest.
Very much so. And the walk has several functions. So, I have a nice walk with my husband. I'll go walk with a friend and have lots of chats about life and the world and the universe. Also like walking on my own, because that's when it's more meditative and when I'm more able to tap into the internal wisdom.
Isn't there a German word for the feeling of well-being you get from walking in the forest?
There probably is. I don't know what it is. There's also a Japanese word. There's that idea of forest bathing.
Forest bathing?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is quite a well-known Japanese concept. I don't think I'd be where I am without the forest.
Nice. Where can people find you, follow you, get in touch?
Oh, thank you for asking. So charlotteotter.com is my website, where they can find links to the book, links to the podcast, links to recent articles that I've written. I have a Substack called Speech Bubbles. My podcast is called Speech Bubbles, and I'm very active on LinkedIn, because if I'm telling my clients that that's what they need to be doing, I also need to be doing it myself. That, I think you've got to act the values that you espouse. So I spend quite a lot of time on LinkedIn, and I'm very friendly. People can come connect with me.
Walk the talk. This will be my last question. What can we wish for you at this point of your journey?
I'd love more people to read the book. It's quite hard marketing a book. It's quite a lonely experience. And I've been on many stages and gone out to speak about it, but I'd love more people to read the book and attach to some of the lessons, not from me. I'm not saying I'm the font of wisdom, but from the amazing leaders who I interviewed in the book.
Very nice. I will put all the links in between underneath the episode. Thank you so much, Charlotte. I had a great time with you today.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.